Gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
What are we talking about? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play. Come after me! I'm a man! I'm for you! Can't wait! Let's go!
Good morning and welcome, Coffee and Sports. Here we are on Sports Empire Network. It is the morning show with Chris and Mo. I am Chris and that is Mo. Mo, how are you this morning, sir?
Doing well. Welcome back, man. Good to have you back.
Good to be back, Mo. We got a lot to get into this morning, but let's start with what we saw last night, Thursday Night Football. There was some speculation going into the game that Saquon was going to try to gut it out, that somehow that 2 to 3 weeks for the ankle wasn't going to be 2 to 3 weeks, and he was going to play last night. That obviously was not the case. And then, Mo, we saw a surprisingly close game in the first quarter. It was 3-3 after one quarter. But that kind of got a little out of hand going into halftime. The Niners pull away to make it a 14-point game going into the half. The Giants keep it close in the third quarter. They actually outscore the Niners 6-3 in the third quarter before the Niners ultimately put the game away. But Mo, I'm sure you watched the game as a Niners fan. I never felt that there was any point in the game that the Giants were actually in the game. I understand that it was tied, after the first quarter. I understand that it was a one-possession game for a lot of the second quarter. I understand that it got back to an 8-point game, and it was actually a 5-point game at one point in the third quarter. I never felt the Giants were truly in the game. Did you ever have that sense during the game?
No, I really just thought that the 49ers left a lot of plays on the field. They were sloppy. They did not play their best football. And look, we say this a lot of times. You can play bad, but if you're supposed to beat a certain team, you find a way to win that game. So I just thought they didn't play well and they were very sloppy. And then they got a little bit more focused. They went back to the run game. I thought Debo, George Kittle's was great in their yards after catch. The yak, they really destroyed them that way. Even the deep ball that Debo caught, that was impressive for me because he's not really a great route runner, but that was kind of a deep comeback. I thought it was an out route, but it was more of a comeback. But that was impressive. That shows to me as a football player, he's adding more to his bag. So the Niners get the win. It wasn't really an impressive win, but I will take the win. I came into the game thinking they're going to be sloppy. This is almost like a trap game, right? If they take the Giants lightly, they could end up on the wrong side of an ugly game. And they found a way to gut it out. If anything, I thought watching this game as I went into the fourth quarter, this game is really more about what the Giants are and what they're not going forward. I really think that. Granted, we know that Saquon Barkley is one of the top running backs in football, but even if they had Saquon, I didn't get the feeling it would have changed the outcome.
No, I totally agree with you. It's hilarious because unless you're a Giants fan. If you're a Giants fan, disclosure, this is not hilarious for you. But we're wrapping up the second quarter. The Giants, the Niners just punch it in to go up by 14. And on the broadcast, which, by the way, Mo, Al Michaels needs to find like another level to his excitement of wanting to care about these Thursday night games, because my man is not invested in his job on Thursday Night Football. I don't know if he's like not awake, if he needs another kick in the coffee or what it is, but he is not invested.
I would describe him as very casual.
Very casual. Very casual. He casually stated that this was the Giants' best first half of football. And I heard it, and it didn't quite register. And I was like, well, that was kind of rude to say, Mr. Al Michaels. They're down by 14 points. Right. They're being outgained 248 yards to 50 on offense. But then I was like, well, wait a minute. No. They were down by 20 last week. They were down by 24 the week. This was their best first half of football, down by 14 points, only 51 yards of offense. Mo, that's wild.
I look at the team, and we knew coming in, they don't really have explosive players on the outside. They've got guys all out of position. They're the current number one at wide receiver should probably be your 3, and the current 2 should be your 4. They don't have a 2 or a 1. And the guy they brought in, Waller, who's one of a vertical tight end, they thought that he was going to impact the game. What a lot of people forget about Waller is this. If you put Waller in a combine, he will be one of the most impressive, if not the most impressive athlete at the combine. But put him on a football field, he can stretch the field, but he's not trying to get hit. He's not the most physical tight end in the world. And a couple of times there are opportunities for him to catch the ball, and he got a case of what we call alligator arms. He made some business choices. But that is who he is. That's who they signed up for. So for all these people out there that have Darren Waller in their fantasy leagues and they think he's going to get close to 1,000 yards receiving, he is not. That won't happen. And at some point, he's going to miss several games. Just know that.
You know, I was all over, coming out of week 2, I was all over Justin Fields. I was talking about, how he completed, 20-something attempts, only had 150 yards. Daniel Jones was in the same boat last night. 22 completions, 137 yards. They have no ability to push the ball down the field. Like you said, if Saquon played last night, I don't foresee this being a different game because, Mo, they couldn't run the ball regardless. They had 11 carries for 29 yards, and going into the fourth quarter, this was like 8 carries for 25 yards. So they were in the game within a score 3 quarters in, and they still weren't running the football. So across the board, special teams, defense, offense, the Giants didn't really do anything great last night. And no, go ahead.
I was going to say, remember, they invested $140 million in Daniel Jones.
Stop that.
And I was a no on that. Not because I'm a Niners fan. As an NFL fan, I just said Daniel Jones is a legit NFL quarterback. He's a capable NFL quarterback. What he is not, Chris, is he is not a franchise quarterback. You don't tie up your team in knots for a guy who's not a franchise quarterback. You would do it for Burrow. You would do it for Mahomes, someone of that nature. He is nowhere remotely near that class of player, and they are married to this dude. They're stuck with him. And going forward, it's not that he's a bad player. I want to reiterate that. But at best, he is an athletic game manager. That's what he is.
No, 100%. And again, it's a case of have and have nots, because if you look at Brock Purdy last night, he did not play well in the first quarter. No. Brock Purdy was a little erratic. He was missing balls. He was high with some balls. He was wide with some balls. It was not the Brock Purdy, the buttoned-up Brock Purdy that we're used to be seeing the past couple weeks and all of last season. But the great thing about Brock Purdy is Kyle Shanahan. And he dialed up some plays that with a high effective percentage, a couple screen passes to CMC, a couple of high percentage throws. Purdy got into a groove. He kind of got things back going in the right way. He got his confidence back a little bit. And then you saw what happened as a result. But Mo, in order to dial up those plays, you need the personnel to do it. And that is the issue the Giants are having right now. When you take Saquon off of that offense, there's no star. There's no great player. I'm not talking about elite player who is the great skill position player on that offense without Saquon Barkley? It has to be Darren Waller. He is your next one. And I'm sorry, Mo, what world are we living in when you're going to rank your best skill position, your best skill players on offense, and your quarterback isn't one or two?
Yeah.
If Saquon's one, I would argue Waller's two. That means Daniel Jones is three. So when you're living in a world where you're $140 million quarterback, at best is the third most talented skill position on your offense, we are in a lot of trouble. unless we're talking Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, which we are not.
It's different, right?
And even then, Mahomes is better than both of them.
No question.
So Mahomes, even in that situation, Mahomes is a one. But unless we are talking, you have a Kelce and a Tyreek, and then you have someone like a Dak Prescott on your team, that is the only time that will be okay. And that is not this situation. So it is not going to be a good look for the New York Giants. And like we said, Mo, their next 4 games, it was a gauntlet regardless. So we didn't think they were going to win their next 4 games with Saquon Barkley. I definitely don't think they're going to win them without Saquon Barkley. And the Giants, I really do think they're facing 1-5 down the barrel. And I don't foresee them coming out the other side and finishing the season competing for a playoff spot once you get off to a 1-5 start. But hey, maybe I'm just a glass half empty kind of guy this morning. I don't know, Mo.
And it's early, so I want to speak to the Giants fans out there. I know you're not giving up. I know you're thinking it's just a tweak here and a tweak there, and we get that first win, we'll go on a run, and before you know it, we're back in the playoff hunt. And that's the kind of faith you have to have as a fan. So I'm not knocking that, but I'm just looking at your team top to bottom, especially on offense. You just don't have the talent offensively to compete, period.
And in the chat, first of all, shout out to the chat this morning. We got Jory in the chat. We got Brett in the chat. We got Gene in the chat this morning. In the chat, Brett was saying, are you not moved by Matt Breida? And I think that comment right there, first of all, I'm not. And Brett knows that. So when he hops on the show in a second, we have a little conversation about that, Brett. But it's funny that he says that, though, Mo, because when Matt Breida was with San Francisco, he was a name. And it just goes to show you what a running back in a system like San Francisco does for the running back. Because look at all the backs that San Francisco has churned out over the last 4, 5, 6 years, and look at what they've done when they've left San Francisco. It isn't all sunshine and flowers for these guys that have made names in Kyle Shanahan's system and then tried to take that and go find success elsewhere. And Breida is an example of that. He was a valuable piece of that San Francisco offense when he was there. He's bounced around the league since then and hasn't been nearly as successful without that system.
Agree 100%. But to be clear, Christian McCaffrey is a special player. He's a special player in any system. So, granted, the system is great for him, but he kind of walked in there established as a talent. So, Matt Breida, I get. I'm with you. Even the guy that's on the Dolphins now, Mozart's more of a breakaway back, right? I still think he's going to do things well for the Dolphins. I don't know if he's going to be a 1,200-yard back, but he is a guy that can give them good production. And look, with that passing attack, you don't really need a 1,500, 1,200-yard back. You just need a guy that makes the defense respect the run, and he can do that.
Well, that's why Miami got your other backup, too, Wilson Jr.
That's a good point.
We were just like, let's get both running backs
right
from San Francisco. Why are we fooling around here? All right, Mo, we're about to have Brett on the show this morning. We're going to talk a little bit of NBA action this morning. Let's welcome Brett to the show. Hey, Brett, how are you this morning, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Hey, we're happy to have you here. So let's jump into a little bit of NBA stuff. Gentlemen, I don't think it comes as a surprise to either of you to hear that Donovan Mitchell is not expected to sign a new deal with the Cleveland Cavaliers. This was something that's been talked about for pretty much a season and a half now. that he didn't necessarily want to end up in Cleveland. That was not necessarily his desire. Which again, when you start talking about superstars and being traded, it's wild that we're going to sit here and be like, oh, you didn't want to get traded to you had some sort of control. Yeah, they do. Look at freaking Dame Lillard right now. We're going to talk about Dame in a minute, but no, he didn't want to. He didn't really want to end up in Cleveland. So the assumption was that unless Cleveland made a lot of noise in the playoffs or surprisingly made a run to get to the finals, he probably wasn't going to be considering a new deal with the Cavaliers. So, Brett, let me start with you. Obviously, you're probably not surprised by the fact that he's not interested in a new deal. What do you see the future being for Donovan Mitchell when he doesn't sign his new deal? Where do you think he ends up?
I think it's the worst kept secret in the league that Donovan Mitchell wants to end up with the New York Knicks, it sounds like already. Let's be real. Now, would I love to see Donovan Mitchell stay in Cleveland? Absolutely. I think that team is young, has a lot of potential, and they could go somewhere if Evan Mobley could just hit a layup in the playoffs. But I think you're looking at a Cavaliers team that'll be much improved this year, and they have a real chance to impressive. They really upgraded the shooting at the small forward spot. But I think that when this contract's up, Donovan Mitchell bounces and he does what he wanted to do in the first place. He ends up on the New York Knicks. There's some other teams I'd love to see him go to. I'd love to see what he does. I'd love to see him on the Orlando Magic. I think he could help out there. Him and Shea would be a fun pairing down in OKC, or maybe even him and Wemby. But I think at the end of the day keep it simple, I think he's just a New York Knick at the end of this contract.
And Mo, we don't hear that a lot anymore. We don't hear he wants to be a Knick. He wants to go play basketball in New York. That is not something in the NBA landscape that we've really heard since the late 90s. So it's interesting that, you have a star in the league who wants to find his way to New York and wants to do something with the Knicks. Obviously, the Knicks could use him. Not saying that he would not make that team better, but Mo, if that does end up being his ultimate destination, what does that shift as far as the Knicks and their outlook, and where does that kind of put them in the paradigm that is the Eastern Conference?
Well, I think if he ends up a Knick, and most of us believe he will, I think they go from being a playoff contender to a legit title contender. Depending on if he's going to go in free agency or if the Cavs realize wisely, we can't let this guy just walk. Let's move him and get some assets in return. So it depends on how he goes and what the Knicks may or may not have to give up. But I do think you put him and Brunson in the backcourt, that is a nice, young, talented backcourt. And they've got some other nice pieces around them. Look, if and when you finally move Julius Randle, you're going to be better just because of that move. But then you add Donovan Mitchell, you are now a title contender. You're one of the better teams in the East. And you have a lot of perimeter guys that can get out and defend with Josh Hart. Brunson's a physical defender on the perimeter. I like the Knicks now, but I would like them so much better if I knew they had a guy that when things are bad, when the offense isn't flowing, he can create for himself off the dribble. Brunson is nice, and he's probably one of the great overachievers in the NBA. But to have a guy that can drop 30 a night on a given night like Mitchell with that kind of explosiveness, that would change things for the Knicks. That would change things for Knicks fans. Now, we know that Knicks fans have a habit of kind of going through the roof over the small moves. If they get Donovan Mitchell, you know how Knicks fans are. They're talking finals, they're talking winning it all. And I get it. As an NBA fan, I'm here for all the Knicks fans smack talk. I just think it would be a great move. On the flip side, if you've got Evan Mobley, you've got Darius Garland, that's a young core. They went out and got a couple of shooters because that's where they were weak at. If you kept that core intact along with Donovan Mitchell, I would say that team would be a team that might be able to compete. The only problem I have with the Cavs roster construction is this. I don't think you can play Allen and Mobley at the same time in the playoffs. You're not in this current NBA, you cannot get away with what I would call zero range players. Both of them are only effective, really effective, consistently in the paint. And that doesn't work against really good defensive teams because they'll double team and load up on your offensive players or your wing players, knowing that Mobley and Allen aren't threats. So that would be my only problem with their roster construction. I don't think they can play together in the playoffs.
And Mo, there seems to finally be an end in sight for the saga that is Damian Lillard. The Portland Trailblazers have come out and they have said that they want to move Dame before the start of training camp, which opens up on October 3rd. Now, that does a couple of things. One, it lets you know that Portland is still aware of the fact that Damian Lillard is on their team, and they are still aware of the fact that Damian Lillard does not want to be on their team. And two, it kind of puts a deadline on when Miami needs to get their act together, because we're not talking about, second teams in the East or these fantasy options or these mystery options. We all know where he wants to go. We all know who wants him. And we all know they're trying to get him the cheapest way possible because they don't think they have competition. But Mo, we've talked about this before. Your competition is the fact that Portland doesn't care. Pay him or not pay him. Play or don't play. What Dame does this season has zero impact on the Portland Trailblazers. So if they're going to move him, they're going to move him for what they want, for the price tag that they think is fair, and they're going to get back for him what they deserve. Mo, now that they have set the deadline of October 3rd, do you think this speeds things up for Miami, and Miami gets across the finish line by adding whatever they need to add to the deal? Or is this one of those things where Riley and company are going to stick to their guns, and this is going to come and go, and Dame is still going to be a Trailblazer?
If the Blazers don't get close to what they want, then he's going to still be a Trailblazer. I don't think there's maybe they don't get everything they want, but they're going to need more than what's been offered, bottom line. And guess what? I don't blame them. I don't blame them. Dame's not part of their future. He's not. But that doesn't mean they're just going to let him go for pennies on the dollar. And I wouldn't either. I wouldn't. If Pat Riley really wants this guy, if they're really invested in bringing him there, offer a better package. And even offer him a package to the point where you're like, this might impact us. That's the only way you're going to get him. If I'm Portland, that's exactly how I feel. I'm not doing this guy any favors. I don't want to hear the loyalty argument. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. You signed the extension, turn right around and ask for a trade after signing an extension. So you wanted to get the bag and then you wanted to bounce. That's not really what I would call loyalty. It's clever, but it's not loyalty. So I'm not really concerned about Dame's feeling. I'm one of the biggest fans right now of Portland's GM. I love that he's standing his ground. He's standing pat, and he should remain that way. Do not let Pat Riley or any outsiders bully you into something that you don't want to do. If Dame has to sit while you play Scoot Henderson and Simons and those guys, then go ahead and do that with that young core. Go ahead and play. You were going to do that anyway. He's not part of your future anyway. He'll just have a really good seat. I'm jealous because I wish I had seats like that, and he'll watch you guys play. But I would sit on him until I get the package that I want or close to it. He set the terms, and because he made things so narrow where it's Miami or nothing, I'm Portland. I'm like, okay, Miami or nothing. We get what we want or nothing.
Brett, all things considered equal, if Dame does not get traded to the Heat, what does that look like for the Heat this season as they push to get back to the NBA Finals and to finally get over the championship hump?
It's brutal for them. It really is. You lost some key pieces this offseason from that championship or that finals run team. Not to mention, obviously Tyler Hero knows he's involved in these trade talks. How motivated is he going to be to play for you? Because he's like, hey, y'all don't want me. Y'all want this guy. So is his mind going to be on playing basketball for Miami? And when it comes to a Dame trade, Miami's really got to be careful because you can trade for Dame, but if you get rid of Hero and the rest of your bench, you can run out Jimmy, Bam Adebayo, Dame. But then who's going to play behind him? Where's the depth? So I get why Miami's also trying to be careful because if you're running if your only bench pieces left are like way past this prime Kyle Lowry and Kevin Love and Dame's not no spring chicken either, it you're not going to go very far. You're gonna get all the hype behind you, but you're gonna lose in the second round because nobody's gonna be able to do anything after your top like three guys. So I don't think this ends very well for Miami if they don't trade for Dame, but if they do trade for him, you just got to be careful. You're not giving up too much because at the end of the day, you still need some depth to really make any progress in the playoffs, and they just won't have that if they go too far in on a Dame trade.
I think they also have to be careful when you look big picture. Remember, we all love Jimmy Buckets, but Jimmy Butler's not young either. He's 33.
Mm-mm.
And he's an older 33, if you know what I mean in terms of how worn down his body is. So they're not young either. And I would say this. It's impressive that the Heat have gone to the finals a couple of times. It really is. But this past season, can we just agree that that was a great run? That was a great run. But that's not one of those things where Heat fans should go, this is the start of something. No, this isn't the start of you guys going to the conference finals or going to the finals 4 or 5 times in a row. You're kind of in a win now or nothing situation. And when you bring in a Damian Lillard, that actually speeds up that process because, as Brett said, Dame's not young. And he's a little bit more brittle now at his current age. Even with Dame, I get why people would love to say, well, look what the Heat did last year. You can't do that. What they did last year was last year. That was a different entity. At one point, they couldn't miss. They literally couldn't miss. In the series against Milwaukee, for whatever reason, and he's been a great player, but Jimmy Butler looked like the best player in basketball. That's how dominant he was in that series. And I'm not saying he's not going to play well going forward, but if you're asking me, is Jimmy Butler going to do anything close to that again? It's not likely. It's not likely. And let's factor in something that really matters more than anything: chemistry. I don't know that Dame and Jimmy Butler would click. I'm not sure. I know Jimmy is one of those guys, he doesn't necessarily need the ball all the time because he's not a volume scorer, but still, Miami has a culture, right? It's grit, grind, and hustle. Dame don't play defense. He's already going to be in Pat Riley's doghouse just on that alone. Dame doesn't compete on defense. He's not a good defender. People seek Dame out. They hunt for Dame on the other end of the court. So I really do think this trade, if it ever happens, I don't feel like it's going to end in a championship for Miami.
Now, guys, interesting revelation from earlier in this week, and that is that the Warriors are looking to bring in Dwight Howard. He's big. I think that's one thing that Warriors critics have always pointed out is they don't really have size. They don't really have a defensive stopper. And I guess you could argue that, Dwight Howard is big and, he could be a defensive stopper. Brett, I don't know. I'm just going to open it up with that. I don't know. I feel like if you're looking at the team and you're kind of already set up and literally you already have the treasure trove of stuff on your team and literally your last request in your treasure trove is, I just wish we had a big man. Because if we had a big man, 3 or 4 times a game, we could do this. And that would just be really great. And we would feel really awesome about ourselves. I would feel like, great. Bring in Dwight Howard. Just so you can roll out that package of plays 4 or 5 times a game. And you just feel better about yourself on the floor. I don't know if I like a situation where you're looking at your construction on your roster and being like, we are missing a critical piece to this team. And we're going to fill that critical role with Dwight Howard. That's where I look at it and I'm kind of like, now you're going to rely on Dwight Howard. Now you're bringing him in because you actually need him to be a productive part of your season. And Brett, that's where I look at it and I go, no.
Hey, you know what, though? Chris Paul, Dwight Howard, the greatest lob threat of 2009 right there. Listen, people got to pump the brakes on like Dwight Howard here to the Warriors because I saw a lot of people getting hyped and they were posting like Orlando Magic highlights of Dwight Howard.
That's where the highlights are.
Like, like Dwight Howard is not. I don't know if I need to say this out loud, but apparently I do to some people. Dwight Howard isn't the same guy he was back in 2009. He isn't the same guy he even was in Charlotte. Dwight Howard can be a serviceable big. He's got a lot of intuition, and he's got some really good instinct. You don't win DPOIs for not being a high IQ player. So I do think Dwight Howard can still be valuable, but I think if you're expecting anything more than a serviceable rebounder and a roll man we'll see if that 3-point shooting that he's been working on translates to the NBA.
Jesus,
which I don't think it will. So I think if you're looking for more than just a serviceable rebounder, a solid defender, and a roll man, you're going to be disappointed. To me, Dwight Howard really isn't the missing piece to any team's championship puzzle in 2023, so I'm not really moved by this. To me, this is no more than if the Warriors decided to go out and get like Mason Plumlee, but
he's a better player.
He is a better player, Mo. I think the thought. Let's walk with me here. Walk with me down the road, okay? The ball's coming down the floor. They pass it to Draymond outside the arc. No one covers Draymond. Draymond gets open threes all day. Now they're going to pass it to Dwight Howard. No one's going to cover Dwight Howard behind the arc. He's going to get open threes all day. The Warriors are thinking, man, if we put them both on the floor together, that's two guys who are open for threes, uncontested, all day.
Look, I'll say this in all seriousness. I think Dwight Howard as a situational player, we're talking about somebody that plays 10 minutes a game, as a situational player. Because remember, he's going to be the backup. All these people are getting hype and stuff. He's coming to back up Kevin Looney, who I like a lot as a player, or Kevon Looney, who I like as a player. But Kevon Looney's not an elite player. He's a very good player. Great team defender, great low post defender, rebounder, all the nine. But at that stage of your career where you're backing up Looney, it's kind of a sign of where you at in your career. So I think as a situational player, Dwight Howard can help the Warriors in certain situations. And to your point, even if you were joking about it, I'm pretty much doubt there are going to be many times when Dwight Howard and Draymond are going to be on the floor at the same time. Because you are doing Steph and Clay no favors by allowing that to happen. But coming off the second unit with a Chris Paul is the master of manipulating mismatches. Dwight will become a lob threat with the Chris Paul. So I do think as a situational player, he can be effective. It's not a big splash move. And let's face it, Dwight is kind of low-hanging fruit because he was just in a league that they actually told him to shoot threes on the regular basis. And for what it's worth, I mean, you are playing in a league where most of the guys, they look like they're 6 foot tall at best. I mean, it's a little man's league, literally. So why not raise up and shoot threes? But look, I don't take Dwight Howard serious anymore. I think I stopped doing that. Maybe when he helped the Lakers win the title as a role player, I thought that was his last gasp for glory or whatever you want to call it. Maybe he should have stopped then and walked out on that high note. It's a low risk, high reward move for Golden State, but I still think coming into the season, even if you add Dwight Howard, one of their clear weaknesses is size.
And gentlemen, circling back to Miami, think about this for a minute. I would almost argue that both of Miami's finals appearance runs are very Eli New York Giant-esque. You're looking at two teams. If you look at the bubble team, you're looking at a team that was built to win a championship in the bubble. A bunch of young guys who weren't really impacted by not being able to be with their families. Because, again, they're young guys. You know, a lot of them don't got wives. A lot of them don't got kids. They're just living that lifestyle anyways. So by locking them in a bubble and saying, you all got to be together all the time and, you're going to hang out and play video games at night, they were like, great. This is wonderful. All right, we do this stuff anyways. So young teams thrived in the bubble outside of the Lakers. The Lakers were the outlier of that, and they ended up winning the title with their experience. But if you look at the bubble run of all the teams that were successful in the bubble outside of the Lakers, it was all young teams. And then their most recent run, they're an 8th place team. It's very much Eli and the Giants, barely making the wild card. And then the playoffs come around and they heat up. And they go into both their Super Bowls as underdogs. And they just start making plays in the Super Bowl. And you're like, what is going on here? Eli willing them to a champion. Like, that's what it was. The only difference was, Jimmy couldn't do it by himself. He couldn't will them to a title on his own. So, Mo, I completely agree with your assessment of Miami fans should not be looking at the bubble success. They should not be looking at what happened last season. And they should not be making bold statements like, we've gone to the finals 2 times in the last X amount of years. We are a little mini dynasty over here. We've had all this success in such a short amount of time. No, you had 2 really good playoff pushes after you got into the playoffs and were not a championship favorite. And bravo to you, because you did have 2 really great playoff runs. But that's all they were, Mo, right? They were playoff runs.
And you give them credit for that. I think they were great runs. Like I said, you're not a dynasty. First of all, you got to win titles to be a dynasty. Like if you only went 1 time instead of twice, but won a title, that holds a lot more value than just 2 finals appearances. So that's the way that works. It is a statement that team has a lot of resolve, a lot of grit and hustle, and they do have a culture out there. But ultimately, you have to win. And I think even if they were to acquire Damian Lillard, while it's exciting and they're going to be fun to watch, and I'm sure they'll be one of the favorites, my gut feeling is that's not going to end with them hoisting up the title with the trophy. I just don't see that, because I think chemistry will be an issue. I think defense is going to be an issue. And you know what? To go back to something what Brett said also, Tyler Hero is going to be like, on these trade talks. He's not going to want to play for the Heat, but I'm not sure he's going to want to play for the Blazers, because right now the Blazers are like, Hero and what else? Because that's not enough, right?
That's not enough.
Even the Blazers like, Hero and what else? Because that's not enough. Like, so they better add a 3rd team and send him to the 3rd team, because he's not going to want to play for Miami or Portland.
And before we get Brett out of here this morning, we're going to pivot back to some NBA stuff. Brett, a couple of big things in the NBA popping up yesterday. We got a trade. Cam Akers is going to the Minnesota Vikings. And then, of course, we have the injury in Dallas. But let's start with the trade, Brett. We got Cam Akers, who, up and down. The Rams like him. The Rams hate him. The Rams like him. The Rams hate him. And now the Rams hate him again. So they finally ship him out of town. But interesting that he goes to a team, Brett, where they appeared already set at the running back position, because they could have had Dalvin Cook and Madison on their roster this year if they wanted to pay Dalvin Cook. And they said, no, we don't need to pay Dalvin Cook. We are completely comfortable with paying Madison $10 million less and giving him control of the offense. And he's going to be running back 1, and we are good to go. Well, fast forward 2 weeks, and the Vikings are 0-2, and they've lost 2 one-score games. And now they're bringing in a former starter to pair up with Madison in the backfield. And Brett, I don't care that Minnesota has come out and said that Madison is still their guy, and Akers' role within the offense is to be decided. No. Are you buying that? Are you buying that Akers is just there as depth, and that, they don't really know how they're going to use him, and Madison is still their guy? Because I'm not buying it. I'm thinking they got 2 looks at Madison, and they were like, he isn't quite as good as Dalvin Cook. We need to upgrade the room a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not buying that either. I think they know exactly how they're going to use him, but I really do think they're going to be thoroughly disappointed, because I don't even think Cam Akers at this point is as good as Alexander Madison. Cam Akers is he's not good, and he hurt his Achilles. The burst isn't there. He can't change direction as quickly. He lost just that much speed, except when you're a running back, that changes everything for you. Like, we're talking about a guy who had a game where he had 22 carries for 29 yards this year. He's not explosive. He's not going to create anything. So they made this trade for Cam Akers, and it's a fine risk to take because of how little they traded for him. They pretty much got him for nothing. But at the same time, if they have any expectations for him, they're going to be disappointed. He's not good anymore, and he hasn't been good since he tore his Achilles. He's had a couple of games here and there, but that's it.
Yeah, Kyle makes a good point in the chat about Dalvin Cook would rather be playing with Kirk than Zach Wilson right now. If there is one man in the league who is happy he only signed a 1-year deal, it is Dalvin Cook. Because he very easily could have signed a 2 or 3 year deal with the Jets and kind of put him on the same timeline as potentially Aaron Rodgers. But he didn't do that. Whether it was his choice or it was all they offered was the 1-year deal. But regardless, it's just a 1-year deal. So he's sitting in purgatory for a year with Zach Wilson as his quarterback. But to Kyle's point, he's probably looking around right now being like, I would have sacrificed $10 million to stay in Minnesota, where at least I got a chance.
Let me ask you something, because I've heard it brought up on one of the other shows with Gene and the crew. What about if the Vikings are 0-4? They go 0-4 because I don't disagree about Madison in the run game, but I would remind both of you that Vikings offensive line, they're horrible. They're horrible. They don't run block well, and Kirk Cousins he gets blown every pass play. I give him a lot. He is standing in there and he is getting destroyed. They are blowing him up. They are a horrible that offensive line is. What about the Jets going all in on pursuing Kirk Cousins? I'm just saying, because if you're Dalvin Cook, that would be cool. I mean, if you're Breece Hall, if you're Wilson, you'll be like, yeah, Kirk. Look, if you get Kirk Cousins, he's not Aaron Rodgers, but he's 10 levels, maybe 30 levels better than Zach Wilson. You're actually a playoff team again. I'm just saying, because I think he's in the last year of his deal, and I'm not sure that Kirk Cousins is part of the Vikings' future. And if you're not going to be very good this year and you're struggling and you're probably going to end up with a high draft pick and you're looking towards the future, why wouldn't you move him if you could get a good enough pick? It's just a thought. I'm just putting it out there.
If the Vikings start off 0-4 and the Jets have 2 wins, so they play the Patriots this week, I think the Jets can beat the Patriots because Mac Jones is Mac Jones. So
that's mean, man. That
is mean. But I can see the Jets winning a close game against the Patriots, and then the Jets will probably get blown out against whoever they play Week 4 because it's probably a better quarterback than Mac Jones. So if you're the New York Jets and you're 2-2, and both wins were completely because of your defense, and Zach Wilson has attributed nothing to your 500 record, which I can see being very true. And if you're Minnesota and you're not bringing Kirk back, if you know that even if you made the playoffs this year and, short of a Super Bowl, that, you were not going to bring Cousins back on a 1 or 2 year deal, that you were going to start looking at, different options to set up your future, I would make the trade if I was Minnesota. Because at that point, you can look at it and you can be like, oh, hey, Arizona, hey, hold on a minute, hold on. You're not the only one that can just start losing games here. Because what we can do is we can trade away our franchise quarterback.
And now you got some competition.
Right. And now you have some competition for the number 1 seed. And if you're the Jets, if you're offer Kirk Cousins, you have to jump on it. Even if the Jets are 1-3, let's say they don't beat the Patriots. If they're 1-3, the Jets can still look at it and be like, okay, that's a huge upgrade over Zach Wilson. My only concern is this. What does it do to Aaron Rodgers? Because let's say you do bring in Kirk Cousins and he does right the ship and he either gets you into a wild card or it's right there down to the last week of the season. And now you have this question of, well, look what Kirk just did for us. Yes, Aaron is still here, but is he going to come back? What's it gonna like? It opens the door for a lot of interesting questions that I just don't know how that falls. I don't know how that sets with everybody.
You know what happens if that ever if that, let's say he ended up in New York. I'm talking about Cousins. It would give the NFL a very NBA like drama, right? The NBA, more than any other league, can keep and pique your interest 365 days a year, right? With a lot of what ifs, what could be, maybe trades, rumor. Nobody runs a soap opera like the NBA does with hearsay and what might happen. We've been talking about Damian Lillard being traded forever. I'm sick of it. I actually wish that it would happen like right now. Like just be done with it. But that's what the NBA does. They get you with the what ifs. Well, if Kirk Cousins goes to New York and he plays well, look, New York Jets fans, they're realists. They're going to be like, well, Kirk Cousins isn't better than Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron is coming off a catastrophic injury, and he is years older. Maybe what happens to Aaron Rodgers is what happened to the last great Packer quarterback who went to New York. He ended up getting bounced, and he ended up going somewhere else.
And playing better.
Right. Guess what? Maybe history repeats itself, and the Vikings
goes
from
to
bizarre,
Minnesota.
and he ends up in Minnesota. They get a rookie quarterback, don't want to play him, put Aaron Rodgers in there for 1 year, and Aaron Rodgers lights it up. He gets to go back against the Packers and give them the business.
That Mo, you just wrote the script. You wrote the script. Clearly, you know someone in the league. You got a little taste of what the script looks like. So I'm a little upset you didn't share that with us. But Brett, before you get out of here, let's talk Dallas Cowboys real quick. They are America's team after all. They lose Diggs for the year on defense with an injury. What does that do for the defense overall? And what kind of impact or ripple effect do you see it having on what Dallas has already built 2 weeks into the season, being 2-0, and the outlook on that defense moving forward? Obviously, losing an all-pro corner is never great, but is this something where you see Dallas is going to be able to overcome it? Or do you see this as a potential hurdle that's going to keep popping up throughout the season with this Dallas Cowboy defense?
So when I first saw it, I thought it was a lot it's devastating. It hurts because when you're an offense and you're looking at Gilmore and Diggs, that's a scary sight to pair with that front seven with Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. But Gene pointed out that they actually have some pretty good secondary depth last night on the show, so I think that they'll have enough depth that they'll be able to overcome that a bit. Like, you can't fully replace what Diggs brings, and they'll be lacking a playmaker in the secondary. And that's unfortunate, but I do think that they'll be able to overcome it. They won't be able to just fully replace what Diggs does, but they'll be able to at least replicate some of it. Now, the injury that I think is least talked about because of the Diggs injury is their Tyler, I can't remember, I never pronounce his last name, but their all-pro center suffered a hamstring injury. And if he misses time, I think that could be actually really bad for the Cowboys too. So it's just a rough day for the Cowboys in general, because if you're going to allow pressure up the middle on Dak Prescott, it's going to lead to turnovers. So I think the Diggs injury is devastating, but I think that they'll be able to survive just because of depth and just how insane that pass rush is.
I agree. I think that it takes away a playmaker, and they will change the way they play defense. They're not going to play nearly as much man coverage, right? But when you have that kind of front line depth, when you have that front seven that can get after it like the way they can get after it without having to send an extra man, I think they're still going to be one of the best defenses in football. You're just going to lack an individual lockdown kind of corner style, but you still have playmakers, like Gene said, in terms of depth. But the strength of that front seven, to me, will carry that defense. They'll play more of a shell defense just to give those corners some help. But I still think you're looking at one of the more dominating defenses in football.
100%. Brett, thank you so much for coming on the morning show this morning. We appreciate having you here, sir, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Appreciate you, Brett.
Yeah. Have a great night, everyone.
All right, Mo, it's that time. It's Friday football here on Coffee and Sports, where we go through all of the upcoming games on the NFL slate. We pick our winners and we see what the breakdown looks like. Mo, you got the best of me last week, sir. We picked different on 4 games, and you took 3 of them. So we'll see what it looks like this week. Let's start off with the Ravens and the Colts. The Ravens are looking to continue their hot start and move to 3-0. The Colts have Richardson, who I don't know if he has cleared concussion protocol yet. If he doesn't play, it's going to be Gardner Minshew, who should be the New York Jets quarterback, but I digress. Who do you like with the Ravens hosting the Indianapolis Colts?
I'm going to go with the Ravens. I like what their offenses look like. Their defense has been solid. And you're right. Gardner Minshew has played well. Look, when Richardson went out, the offense actually took off under Gardner Minshew. So what I will say is I'll take the Ravens, but I think it's going to be a closer game than most would predict. But I'm going to go ahead. I think Baltimore goes ahead and wins. They're trying to get a stranglehold on that division, and they're going to win.
Yeah, I think Baltimore is going to be very aware of the moment this weekend. They're going to be aware of the fact that Joe Burrow isn't going to most likely play Monday night, or if he does play, he is not going to be close to 100%. They're looking at potentially them moving to 3-0 and the Bengals moving to 0-3, which I think is going to be insurmountable when it comes to the division. So I know it's silly to call a division 3 weeks into the season, but I'm sorry. I cannot see the Bengals climbing out of an 0-3 hole 3 games behind the Ravens to win this division unless there is an injury to Lamar Jackson. That is the only circumstance, which could very well happen.
Which is possible.
Correct. But unless that happens, if the Ravens stay healthy and they start off 3-0 and the Bengals start off 0-3, I think it's a situation where the Ravens are kind of setting their sights on the division and aren't going to have too much of a challenge the rest of the way, because I'm not impressed with the Cleveland Browns and I'm not impressed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think they're going to understand the importance of this game, as important as a game can be in the first month of the season. And I think they're going to show up and they're going to show out, and the Ravens are going to secure that victory. Next up, we have the 0-2 Chargers. They are heading to the 0-2 Vikings. And Mo, someone's got to win this game. Someone's got to figure it out here, whether it's the Chargers figuring out how to play defense, whether it's the Vikings winning a close game after losing 2 close games to start off the season. Who do you like with the Chargers and the Vikings?
Man, this is a close. You know what? This could be, and I said it before, this could be a shootout. This could be the game that you're getting 35-30 or something like that, and both quarterbacks throw for close to 400 yards. It could be that type of game. Multiple receivers with over 100 yards receiving. Justin Jefferson gets 100 yards in his sleep, right? We kind of know that. He just does. I'm going to, you know what? I'm going to take, most people probably take the Chargers. I'm going to take the Vikings, and I'm going to say if they play a clean game, they're going to win the game. Now, that's easier said than done, obviously, because they've shot themselves in the foot the first 2 games of the season with multiple turnovers. But I'm going to go with the upset. To me, it's an upset. I'm going to take the Vikings.
I'm going to go Chargers. I think that Staley should have been fired last week. If he goes 0-3, I don't know how you don't fire him. Like, how many more games does he have to lose? I don't understand. I just don't think they're going to start 0-3. I understand that it's at home in Minnesota, and I would not be surprised if the Vikings win. I just think that there's a little more on the offensive side, and I keep looking at the Chargers, and I keep saying at some point their defense has to at least play competent football, right? Like, there's enough talent on there where maybe they just start calling their own scheme. Maybe they just stop listening to whatever Staley's calling for them, and they just kind of get together as a brain trust.
Oh, I like that better. So let Herbert call his own plays, and the middle linebacker who usually calls the plays for the defense just weighs off the D coordinator. I got this, and maybe that's the path forward to getting some wins.
Because I feel like there's enough talent on that side of the ball where if they just do their own thing, they can't play worse than they're playing now. So anything else will be better. So let them call their own plays. So I'm going to go with the Chargers this week. But like I said, if Minnesota wins, I'm not shocked. But one of those teams has to win. Next up, we got the Falcons visiting the Detroit Lions. The surprising 2-0 Falcons. Mo, do they move to 3-0?
This is tough because before the season, a lot of us looked at Detroit on both sides of the football, and we really think Detroit was going to win 11 to 12 games, right? We think they're going to take that division. I picked the Falcons the first 2 weeks. I am not picking them this week.
Ooh,
I'm not
ooh.
doing it. I was tempted to pick them because but my gut is saying no. So I'm going to go with my gut. I just yesterday I said Falcons, and today I woke up I don't feel good about it. So I'm going to go with the Lions.
I am also going to go with the Lions. Lions are playing at home. The Lions are trying to keep pace in their division. They got a lot. They got a lot of stuff happening over there in their division as well. They're trying to keep up with. They got the Packers, who are looking better than expected. They're trying to capitalize on the early woes of the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, the Bears are a dumpster fire, so that is what it is. But the Lions moving to 2-1 is something that is really going to go a long way as far as them keeping pace with the Packers. So I'm going to take the Lions this week as well. Nothing against the Atlanta Falcons, but even though they're 2-0 and most of their division is 2-0, Mo, they're not all that caliber team in the AFC South. So, they're going to lose games. They're going to lose close games that maybe you thought they should have won. And I think this is going to be a close game. I think it's going to be competitive, but I think it's just going to be one that the Lions eke out at the end. Next up, the 0-2 Denver Broncos head to Miami to face the 2-0 Miami Dolphins in their home opener. Mo, I'm going Dolphins all the way here. I don't think that the Broncos offense is going to be able to keep up with the Dolphins offense. I don't think the Broncos defense is going to pose the same threat as the Patriots defense. I will say this, I'm slightly concerned. Jalen Waddle is still in concussion protocol. It is 50-50 at best that he plays on Sunday. So that could be one less weapon for Tua. But that being said, I think that the way we saw the Dolphins defense play last week, I don't put the Broncos offense that much ahead of the Patriots offense. I really don't. Maybe if they were full strength, I would feel differently. But being down the number of receivers they're down, looking at this dink and dunk version of Russell Wilson that we saw last year and we're continuing to see this year, I think that the Broncos defense is a lot closer to the Broncos offense is a lot closer to the Patriots offense than many people want to admit. And I think you're going to see a similar result, but I think you're going to see a much more explosive Dolphins offense because the Broncos are not the Patriots defense.
And the Broncos defense was projected to be one of the better defenses in the league like they were last year, and they have not held up to their side of the ledger. Plain and simple. Like, the offense hasn't been great. The defense has been worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking this is a must-win game almost for Denver. I really was. And I still do. And yet, I don't think they're going to win it. And I feel bad. I have nothing. I want Russ to win. I do want Russ to win. I want Russ to do well. But this is a lopsided coin when it comes to criticism. So it's, well, Sean Payton criticizes Russell Wilson and the offense. You call the plays, bro. You're not doing a great job. You got Russell Wilson playing more like Alex Smith with the dink and dunk. That's not who he is. You have to play to your quarterback's strengths. And I get it. You're playing with your third, fourth, and fifth wideouts as your first, second, and third wideouts. Even then, though, you still have to play call to suit what he does well, not to what you want him to do. He's not a dink and dunk quarterback. He really isn't. And so, bottom line, I think the Dolphins win. And this might be the game where the Broncos get blown out. I don't think it's going to be a close game.
And on top of that, you have Denver traveling across the country. It is September in Miami. It is going to be warm. It is going to be humid. West Coast teams traveling to Miami in September don't usually fare well in the second half of those games, as their bodies kind of are trying to adapt to the humidity and the heat. So that is something that's also going to be working against the Broncos this weekend in Miami. Next up on our slate of games, we have the New Orleans Saints heading up to Lambeau to take on the Green Bay Packers. I like Aaron Love. I like Jordan Love in the Green Bay Packers, but I'm going to go Saints here. I think that the Saints kind of surprise everyone. They've had a couple of sluggish games to open up the season, but I think that week 3 is going to be a little bit of a coming out party for Carr and the Saints offense. I think the Saints have a top 10 defense already, and they're going to continue to prove that. But I'm going to go a little bit of an upset here, and I'm going to take the Saints.
I'm going to go with the Packers. I do think it'll be a close, competitive game. I think the Saints have the better defense, but I think the Packers defense will be able to generate a couple of turnovers from Carr. I don't dislike Derek Carr, but when we talk about quarterbacks and stuff like that, and we constantly do that during the course of a season or even before the season, there's something about him throughout his career. I I don't see what other people see. I don't see it. He's a nice guy, and he seems like a decent enough leader. He has a strong arm, but maybe it's an intangible thing. But there's something that's not quite right. Like I don't understand how he doesn't take the heat that Kirk Cousins take,
Mm,
because I don't think he's better than Kirk Cousins. He's not. And,
yep.
and he doesn't take nearly the amount of heat. There's always an excuse. So this season, with a very good defense, by default, you're supposed to win that division. Literally by default.
Yep.
If you don't even throw the ball for 200 yards a game, as long as you don't turn the ball over, you're going to win that division. And still, I don't know if they win that division. So I'm going to go with the Packers.
The Buffalo Bills head to Washington to face the 2-0 Washington Commanders. As much as I would love to see the Commanders win this game and push Buffalo to 1-2, I just don't think they have the firepower on the offensive side. I can see a world where that defense rattles Josh Allen, and I can see a world where the Bills lose this game. But the one thing I have to say about Buffalo is they generally beat up on the teams they're supposed to beat up. As much of a roller coaster ride as Josh Allen is, when a lesser team comes to town or they go and visit a lesser team, even if it looks rough in the beginning, they end up winning by 2 or 3 scores. That's what happened last week with the Raiders. The Raiders were competitive with Buffalo for the first quarter and a half, and then eventually Buffalo just put them away, and they won, by 3 scores going away. And I think we're going to see a similar situation with the Commanders. I would love to see Washington start off 3-0, but I'm going Buffalo this week.
I'm going to go with the Commanders for the upset.
Ooh.
I'm going with the Commanders for the upset. And I'm going to say that Sam Howell outplays Josh Allen. I say it's a close game, and the Washington Commanders find a way to generate a couple of turnovers from Josh Allen.
Look at Mo taking the Commanders to knock off the Bills. I like it. The Tennessee Titans are heading to the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are in a little bit of disarray after losing Nick Chubb for the season. They do bring in Kareem Hunt. I think Hunt's going to fit in nicely with the offense. Unfortunately, Mo, I don't think it matters because you're looking at an offense that has run for nearly 200 yards 2 weeks in a row. And I have more questions about Deshaun Watson after 2 games than I did going into this season. And that was before I thought the offense was going to run for 200 yards in their first 2 games. So I think that the Tennessee front 4 and the Tennessee front 7 is above average. I think they're going to give the running game some troubles. I think this is going to be a game that Watson would have to put on his back to win. It's going to be there. The Tennessee secondary isn't great, so he's going to have opportunities to do that. I just don't think he is. So I'm going to go Tennessee here.
So I think this is going to be one of those old-fashioned, old-school 3 yards in a cloud of dust on both sides of the football. But against that front 7, more in particular, that front 4, I don't see King Henry doing a lot. If like I said the other day, if he carries the ball 25 times, he's probably going to have like 80 yards. And to me, for Tennessee to win, he's got to be getting downhill, and he's got to be well over 100 yards. I'm actually going to take Cleveland in a low-scoring game just because I trust Watson more than I do Tannehill.
That's scary, Mo. That is a scary sentence that you just said. You trust Watson over someone else? That is scary, sir.
I'm just saying. I agree with you about their offense should be better. If you're a quarterback and you got 200 yards rushing, play action pass should be there all day, every day. So
all day.
I
All
don't
day.
understand the struggles, but if he's going to have a breakout game where they actually put it on his shoulders and he can say this one is on me, it would be this game.
The New England Patriots are heading up to the Meadowlands to take on the New York Jets. This is actually a pretty, again, it's hard to have big games the first month of the season, but this is a pretty big game. Both of these teams are looking up at the Dolphins in the division. The Jets are obviously going through the loss of Aaron Rodgers. The Patriots are trying to find their footing with Mac Jones. And really, this division game, obviously you want to win your division games. But these early on division games where neither team is exactly where they want to be, they have a little more juice to them. And if the Jets come out of here with a win, Mo, and they're 2-1 without Aaron Rodgers, and both of those wins are in division, one over Buffalo, one over the Patriots, Jet fan wakes up Monday morning and says, the world hasn't fallen on us yet. Like we're essentially 3 weeks without Aaron, and we got destroyed by maybe the second best defense in the league, but we're 2-0 in division, and it looks different. It feels different. If I'm Bill Belichick and the Patriots, I'm looking at this saying there's no way we're losing to Zach Wilson. there's just no way.
I'd say that.
We're going to make Zach Wilson see ghosts out there. We're going to make him throw his 2 or 3 picks a game. So what it comes down to for me is, do I have more faith in Wilson as a quarterback or Mac Jones as a quarterback? Because they're both playing good defenses. The Jets have a better defense, but they're both playing good defenses. And I'm going to go Patriots. I'm going to say that Mac Jones makes more plays on the offensive side of the ball. I think they're both going to make mistakes. But I think Zach Wilson is going to make mistakes that lead to points, whereas I think the mistake or two that Mac Jones makes, I think the defense is going to hold them to a field goal or whatever. And Bill Belichick, you better pull out the same nonsense on special teams that you did against Miami, with people running all over the place and can't be. You better pull out that same nonsense, because if your special teams looks vanilla again this week, and you just pull out that nonsense against Mike McDaniel, I'm going to feel a certain way about it. But I'm going Patriots this week.
I'm going Patriots because I do think Mac Jones is a much better quarterback. I also think that this is a battle of the run games. Which run game can get on track? The Jets have the more explosive run game, no question. But I think that the Patriots run game in a slugfest with their combination of backs, with Zeke, I think they win the game. I think it's an ugly game, but I think it's the kind of game that Bill Belichick wants it to be. Slugfest, low scoring, trust in your defense, trust in your special teams and your kicker. I think the Patriots find a way to win.
Mo, think about this. If the Colts lose to the Ravens, which we think is going to happen, if the Titans lose to the Browns, which you think is going to happen, that means if the Texans knock off the Jacksonville Jaguars, that entire division is 1-2 and tied for first place 3 weeks into the season. Can the Houston Texans go into Jacksonville and knock off the Jacksonville Jaguars?
It's not impossible, but coming off the loss that Jacksonville just had, I have to assume that you're going to get a much better version of the Jaguars on both sides of the football. You're going to see a better Trevor Lawrence, a more effective Travis Etienne. I don't see it happening. I do like the Texans defense, even though they've had some holes here and there, but really their defense, their struggles are directly connected to their offense going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. Then they get behind, and then their offense only throws exclusively. So I think the Texans just don't have enough firepower to beat the Jags. It'll be a competitive game, but I'm going with Sunshine and the crew.
I think the moment was too big for Jacksonville. I think everything lined up for them to be able to beat Kansas City. I think they had 3 or 4 opportunities to really, open that game up and take a lead and really put the pressure on the Chiefs. And I think the moment was just a little too big for them at this point in the season. And as a result, they just looked out of sorts a few times in that game. I don't think they're going to have the same issue against the Texans. I think that, they're going to come into this game with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, knowing that obviously they weren't guaranteed to beat the Chiefs, but knowing that they should have played better and knowing that they left a lot of points and a lot of opportunities on the board against the Chiefs. And I think, unfortunately, the Texans are going to be the team that gets taken out on. So I am also going to go Jacksonville this week, and I think they're going to improve to 2-1. Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers heading up to the Seattle Seahawks. I do not think this game is going to be close. I think that the Seahawks are going to handle Carolina from the kickoff through the end of the game. This might be a blowout. This might be one of the least competitive games of the week. I'm taking Seattle.
If it's not a blowout, I'll be shocked. I'm going with the Seahawks as well. Anybody that's seen Carolina, clearly he is struggling right now. Bryce Young is struggling to not just throw the football, but I think he's struggling with the speed of the game. Right? You watch him, and look. To be fair to him, that offensive line, they don't give him a lot of options. You hike the ball and you're running for your life. Basically, that's what it is. But you can tell that the speed of the game right now, he hasn't adjusted to it. And when guys are not ready for the speed of the game, the first thing they want to do is check down to everything. Every pass he throws, maybe 5 or 6 yards at best downfield. He's not even looking downfield. He's just looking to get a completion off. And that's part of being a rookie. And I still think he will be better the further along in the season that we get. But right now, I actually thought the Panthers as a whole would be a better football team. So to me, going into this game, if Seattle doesn't blow them off, nobody would be more shocked than I would.
In our second blowout special of the weekend, we have the Chicago Bears heading up to Arrowhead to face the Kansas City Chiefs. The Bears are a complete dumpster fire right now. Their defensive coordinator just quit this week amid allegations that something happened at his house, and the FBI searched him for some reason. We don't know. We don't know what's happening there. Also this week, you had Justin Fields make comments about how he feels robotic in the offense and robotic in his play. And when he was asked to clarify, he basically said it was the coaching. And then he backpedaled on that a couple of days later and, tried to clarify and not blame the coaching. On top of that, Justin Fields is just not a good quarterback. He is 5-22 as a starter. He is not a prolific passer of the football. He is another run-first guy. I don't like the weapons that he has. I think that it's going to be over at halftime. I'm going Chiefs.
So I think they do have talent at the skilled positions, but you can only run so many bubble screens till the defense figures it out, right? And eventually, you got to throw the ball down the field. Like, I know in the preseason, they were talking about, look how explosive Chicago's offense look. And I'm like, they're screens. They're screen passes. He's not really throwing the ball down the field. And I was one of those people that thought, great athlete, will probably put up numbers, but will it translate to wins? And will it show whether or not he's progressing as a quarterback? And right now, I don't see any progression with him as a quarterback. And so I'm a little bit disappointed that he would go, well, it's the coach's fault, or they're not running me as much. And I'm like, your best plays were when they called pass plays and then you took off and ran. Like, that were your best plays. It wasn't the called runs, it was just you running on a pass play. And so again, I see the talent, I see the potential, but all those people that were thinking top 10 quarterback, wow, just take it down a notch. Like, I give Derek Carr a lot of grief. He's better than that guy.
Mo, in our third blowout special of the week, the Dallas Cowboys are heading out to Arizona, to the desert, to face the Arizona Cardinals. This is another game that will probably be over by halftime. This Cowboys defense is going to wreak havoc on the Arizona Cardinals offense. I don't foresee the Cardinals scoring more than 17 points in this game. I honestly don't even see them scoring that much, but I could see a situation where they score 10 through the first 3.5 quarters and they get a garbage time touchdown late when it's already a 20 or 30 point game. I don't think this is going to be close. This might be the biggest blowout of the weekend because you're literally looking at the worst team in the NFL against one of the best teams in the NFL. But this game is going to probably compete with the Chiefs game for the biggest blowout of the weekend. I'm going Dallas all the way.
So I'm going Dallas. And the only way this is remotely interesting is if Dak turns the ball over. If that's the only thing that's remotely interesting. If Dak plays a clean game, he don't have to throw for 300 yards, but if he doesn't turn the ball over, it's going to be a runaway blowout. It won't be remotely close.
And then the final game on the slate, because we are going to touch the Monday Night Football games on the show on Monday, but the final game on the slate is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers heading to Vegas to play the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't particularly care for either of these teams, but I will say this. I do like the Steelers' defense, and I think that the Steelers' defense is going to give Jimmy G and company some fits. So I don't think this is going to be a pretty game. I don't think this is going to be a showcase to close out the football Sunday, but I'm going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers here.
So I think the Steelers' defense was really highly touted coming into the season. But if you've watched the first two games of the season, everybody can run the ball down their throats. Everybody. So they're not nearly as good as projected. And I would say this. I don't know how good the Raiders' offensive line is, but if they're halfway decent, this could be the game where Josh Jacobs has a breakout game because everybody literally runs up the middle and destroys them with the run game. So I'll pick the Steelers, but it's not one of those. It's one of those picks where you're like, I'll pick the Steelers, but if they lose, I won't be shocked.
So, Mo, once again, we have 4 different picks this week. The Minnesota game, the Green Bay game, the Washington game, and the Cleveland game. Hopefully I fare a little bit better against you this week than I did last week. I would like to just go 500, but we'll see what happens.
No doubt.
But, Mo, that's it for this morning. We got a big NFL slate coming up this weekend. What chance do you give Coach Prime and his boys this weekend?
Well, if I'm honest.
Let's be honest.
So can I phrase this like this? If they're competitive and they lose, even though it's a loss, it's a win. Does that make sense?
What's competitive? One
Like,
score, 2 score?
Let's say they lose, I don't know, 30-20. That's competitive to me.
I feel it.
Now, I know there's some people out there, what are you talking about? Lose competitive. They're going to go out there, they're going to blow the doors down. Look, I'm just going to say this. If they don't get blown out, that's kind of impressive.
I agree. I'm in the same boat with you.
I'll leave it at that. If they don't get blown out, that's impressive.
I think they're going to get blown out. I don't think they have the defense to stop that offense. So
no, they don't. Let's establish that they don't have it.
They don't have it. And when the Colorado State defense is wearing you out the entire game, and you have trouble stopping them, and you need epic comeback at the end of regulation, and then you need 2 great drives in overtime to take down Colorado State, and now you have a top 10 team, and you're going to their place.
Just putting it out there. If Colorado's offense is just electric,
right,
and they can match them score for score, well, now we're looking at a game where it's 55-60 or something like that, which is great for us.
That's great for us.
But it would take that kind of offensive output from Colorado to be in a game. I'm just being real. Other than that, they're going to get ran.
Because they would have to overcompensate for the fact that their defense can't stop anything.
Exactly. It would have to be like a basketball score because their defense they're just not a good defensive team in any way, shape, or form. They have playmakers on defense, but they're not a good defensive team.
Well, now that we've crushed all the Colorado fans this morning,
go Buffs! Go Buffs!
We do believe. We can officially close out the show. Thank you so much for Brett for being on the show here today. Thank you to all of the love and support in the chat this morning. Sports Empire Network, if you guys aren't checking out what we're doing here, you really need to come through. We're always striving to present you guys with the the best talents and the best shows that we can put out there. And I will tell you this, Mo, I have never had an opportunity to work with a group of people more dedicated to this craft and dedicated to presenting the masses with our opinions and our takes and our perspectives in the world of sports. And we have such a dedicated crew that, in this world, there's ups and there's downs.
For sure.
We kind of got, we got a little Josh Allen thing going on over here. This is a very competitive environment, and there's a lot of options that people have not just every morning, but just in general when it comes to consuming their sports. And we really do appreciate the hustle and the grind of everyone within our network. And we even more appreciate those people who tune in to watch us, because we know you have so many options available. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of great things happening here at the Empire, and we want all of you to continue to be a part of it. So if you're not doing so already, make sure you're following us, make sure you're subscribing to us, because we continue to grow and offer great offerings here at Sports Empire Network, and we want all you to be a part of that.
Appreciate everybody out there in the chat. Appreciate everybody that's been participating, watching the show, not just this show, not just Coffee and Sports in the Morning with Chris and Mo, but the cheap seats, the big three, wire to wire, all the products, all the content that we offer out to you guys. I'm sure everybody out there, I can't speak for everybody, but knowing the people that I know that we work with, they're all grateful. They're all appreciative. Look, it's kind of weird. We almost can't wrap your mind around the fact that we do have people that are almost like fans, but we're grateful for it. And we're grateful that you tune in. So stick with Sports Empire Network. Check out all the content that we have to offer to you guys. Check out the Empire.
And that is it for the morning show here on a Football Friday. We will see you back here on Monday, where we will break down everything that happened in week 3 of the NFL season. We will get you ready for not one, but 2 Monday night football games. We'll have all the latest news on whether or not we think Joe Burrow is going to play Monday night, and we will see which undefeated teams remain undefeated and how many exactly are left. That's all going to happen here Monday morning on Coffee and Sports with Chris and Mo. On behalf of myself and my partner, Mo, thank you so much for being here this morning, and we'll see you on Monday.